Good afternoon, everyone. I see a lot of you on Zoom. I wonder if you can hear me. Can you just give me a thumbs up so I know I'm broadcasting? Thank you so much. I'm Kevin Drinkard. I am the math coordinator at the County Office of Education. Super excited to be with my colleague, Jen McCrae, science coordinator. And Jen, in a moment, I'll ask you to invite yourself. Just excited about the day. I enjoyed the morning sessions that I was able to participate in. I went to one on improv. It was really a fun session, ways to sort of build community. And I hope that you had good morning sessions too, as well. Hope you had a good lunch. And I hope you're ready to go for the afternoon session. Ours is on using formative assessment in distance learning. And once again, I'm Kevin. Excited that you're here, and I'm excited to co-present with my colleague, Jen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jen McCrae, and I'm the science coordinator here at the Santa Cruz County office, so welcome.
We want just to get a sense of who's in the room. We would love it if you maybe in the chat box sort of share who you are, what school you're at, a grade level you teach, and that would be great. Name your school, grade level that you teach in the chat box. And as folks are typing in, I invite us all to just sort of, get a sense of who is in the room today. Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing where you're at. We represent a variety of grade levels. We have participants from north to south in our county. Super exciting. I used to teach at Santa Cruz High School. I see the name of at least one former Santa Cruz High School student. Our profession is so wonderful for so many reasons. One is that, we see, as we're teaching, we see leaders emerging and stepping up into roles like teaching and administration and so on, ways they can support students. So we're going to use two apps today. One is Zoom, which we're already on. The other app that we want to model is Nearpod. Now, in the world of apps, there's a lot of them, and we're sensitive to the fact that a lot of us can be sort of overwhelmed with the number of apps. We're going to drive the app in a way that should not require for you any learning on the user side, but we wanted to sort of model ways that apps like Nearpod can be used for teachers to gather sort of formative assessment real time from a number of students. Different districts are using different apps. I know some districts are using Pear Deck or a number of other apps. In fact, we're going to be sharing a matrix that has about, 15 or 20 apps that you can use to gather formative assessment. And our recommendation to you would be, focus on the apps that your district or your school is leaning on and get good at those. Like all of the apps can be used in ways that can support us as teachers to gather some formative assessment for students. So Jen's putting the link there. It's the one that's share.nearpod.com. And I would appreciate it if you'd click on that link and open up a Nearpod slide as well. And I, as the teacher, have a dashboard where I can see participants that are signing up. So let's see if we can we have 22 on the Zoom. Let's see if we can get 22 on the Nearpod. So click, enter a name, and join up. And there we go. I'm starting to see you pour on. got Andy, we've got Brittany, Deb, Gabriel, Heather, Jenny, Layla. Thank you so much. Keep on signing up. I love how Heather also added her pronouns. I can see that, not sure that you all can. As we get started, Jen's going to keep putting the link in. And then I also want to share one other idea before we get started. I'm going to drive the visuals with Nearpod. So what I'm going to ask you to do, if you're using multiple screens or a single screen, set up your screen so you can see Zoom and you can see Nearpod at the same time. So I'm going to put our title slide on, and I want you to just sort of jiggle your computer so you can see Zoom, a Zoom screen, and a Nearpod screen. Take a moment and do that. And if you feel comfortable that you can see both Zoom and Nearpod, can you give me a thumbs up? Awesome. On my Zoom, I have two screens. I have screen number 1, screen number 2. Screen number 1, most of you have your cameras on, and I saw 100% thumbs up. So I have some confidence that we are just about ready to get started on our day. And I think let's go ahead and do it. This session is on formative assessment in distance learning. And in a moment, we're going to start with a connecting activity. But before we do, I just want to sort of foreshadow what we want to do. My colleague, the TOSA, Stephanie Sumera, in her introductory remarks this morning, talked about we're all teachers and have a lot of teaching experience. What's new for a lot of us is applying it in a distance learning environment. One of our outcomes is to just, let's use what we already know. Let's identify attributes of effective formative assessment from face-to-face instruction and make those explicit. Then let's think of, Jen and I will take you through some activities where you experience some ways in a distance learning environment to apply those formative assessment techniques. And we'll create some time for us to reflect on and discuss those. Quick session, it's only 45 minutes. We're going to welcome, we're going to connect in just a moment. We're going to unpack effective formative assessment attributes using Nearpod, some of the functionality that it has. We're going to have some time in random breakout groups for you to sort of lean on other participants, share some of your thinkings, share some of your ideas, and listen to some ways that other teachers are going to be applying what you're learning and experiencing in your own classrooms. So that's sort of our outcome and agenda for the day, or the 45 minutes. And I'm going to ask Jen to sort of take us through a little connecting activity. And Jen, I'm going to advance the slide and we're ready to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. So I thought we'd do a quick connector where we're maybe going to move a little bit and perhaps go outside where there isn't a screen. So I'm going to ask you to step up, step outside. If you don't have easy access to the out of doors where you are, you can peek out your window. But I'd like you to identify one thing that you see outside that brings you joy. So take maybe 2 minutes, take a look outside, step outside, and then come back and just type into the chat something you see out in the natural world today that brings you some joy.
I'm going to look out my window.
Definitely a couple of folks are seeing dogs and that's bringing them joy. I'm definitely with you on that. Gardens, hummingbirds, green trees flowing with the wind. That's poetic. Air, yes, we need that, right? I don't know how easy it is to see, but we do need it. Somebody has some deer. Deer making its way down the hill. Beautiful. Eucalyptus trees. Wonderful. Well, thank you for taking the time to do that. Just maybe a little reminder, it's good for us to move. It's also good for us, you know, in our very screen dependent world that we're all living in right now, to really make time for us and our students to really, you know, step outside, step away from the screen and connect with the natural world. Because I think it's really helpful, I think, in that social emotional learning sense, to be a little grounded and also just give us a little space to breathe and realize what a beautiful world we really do live in. So thank you for engaging with that. And I'm going to hand it back to Kevin.
Thanks, Jen. As I'm broadcasting from my garage, which is since March has been my home office, we're going to jump into our topic. And we're going to start jumping in now to the sort of the functionality of an app like Nearpod that can allow teachers to sort of gather some information from participants that they can start then using as formative assessment. And what I'm going to do is use a function of Nearpod called Collaborate. That's its official name. I call it the cork board. And it behaves a lot like a cork board. You should see it on your Nearpod slide. And there's a little box at the bottom where you can type in, and here's what the prompt is. Hopefully, I think you can see it too. You're teaching, and the question is this: how can you discover what students know while they are still in the process of learning it? What I'd like to do is, using this Collaborate board or this cork board, is invite you to respond to that prompt via writing in that little text box. So when you're so moved, type something in and share it. We will all be able to see it. How can you discover what students know while they are still in the process of learning it? Let's take a silent minute and think and write. If you haven't yet, please also look over the responses that other colleagues have entered. For folks who are just joining us, Cindy, I saw your comment in the chat. Jen's going to put the link to a Nearpod deck in the chat box, and when you click on that, I think it'll bring you up to what people are interacting with. Let's take just 30 more seconds, just having a look at our group responses. And I think both Jen and I are going to sort of respond to some of what we're noticing, and we'll invite you to respond also either in the chat box or via your camera and microphone as well. You know, the face-to-face world back in February, we, you know, thinking about ways we were doing these in face-to-face environments, checking in, asking questions, observing, right? When we were in our classroom and we could observe our kids, it was wonderful. Listening in, thumbs up, thumbs down. One that really caught my eye is looking at their work, looking over their shoulder. And one of my big inquiries right now is how can we emulate that in the online distance world? How can we look over their shoulders? How can I stand behind Ola, for example, and look over her shoulder and see what she's writing or thinking or doing? Or jump into a breakout room and listen in. Jen, do you want to react to what you're saying?
You really hit on the one that resonated with me. And also another one that resonated with me was the listening into conversation. So I think that's a little bit challenging too for us. I used to call that ear hustling when kids were in groups and I'd wander around and listen to what they were saying. But I think we can translate that into our virtual environments using our breakout groups. So that one really resonated with me.
I want to give some space also. Would any of the participants notice or wonder anything about what you saw on our cork board? Okay, I do want to foreshadow what we're going to have some time for small group interaction in a little bit. So I want to sort of dig in to something that emerged here, and that is that concept of sort of leaning over somebody's shoulder and looking at their work. And I want to highlight how an app like Nearpod or Pear Deck or some of the other apps give us sort of a view into our students' thinking. And I want to model that with one of the features that Nearpod calls, it's called Draw It, their Draw It function. It's I'm the math coordinator, math teacher. I use a function like Draw It to like post a problem and invite students to share their thinking on the problem. We're going to model, instead of a math problem, we were wondering what we would model. We're going to actually model a little bit about formative assessment. I'm going to advance to your screen in a moment. And Nearpod has, in Draw It function, has a way for you to write on a slide with a pen, or highlight with a highlighter, or type. So you'll be able to interact with the slide I'm about to share with you. And what I'm going to ask you to do is look for the little thing that looks like a highlighter. And you will see some text. And I would like you to highlight the text that resonates with effective or with language associated with formative assessment. My slide has those instructions written. I'm going to advance the slide and restate the instructions. So on your Nearpod slide, I'm going to ask you to experiment with the highlight pen and highlight keywords or phrases that resonate with some of our corkboard responses about formative assessment. So what we have here on the slide is some like narratives of things that are happening in a classroom. Some of them are examples, some are non-examples of formative assessment. Find the thing that looks like a highlighter and highlight words or phrases consistent with formative assessment. If you have a question, add it to the chat box. I'll be silent for just a couple minutes so we can sort of dig into this narrative. Find the highlighter and highlight. Go for it. take another 30 seconds or so, and then I want to show you something that I see as a teacher.
Should we be able to see other people's highlights or just our own?
You can only see your own right now. Just thinking about time, like our goal isn't to necessarily read and respond to all of these right now, but I want to show you something about the draw it function in Nearpod. I'm going to share my screen, and I know that screen management will be a challenge because you have a Nearpod screen and you have a Zoom screen, and then now I'm going to share my screen. There's going to be 3 screens to manage, which is a lot, but it's doable, I think. And I want to share with you what I'm seeing as you're doing that exercise. So in our corkboard, one of the participants, one of you said, you know, how can we look over student shoulders? You didn't know this, but I was looking over all of your shoulders just then. I have access real time to every student's interaction with whatever activity that I'm sharing on in Nearpod. So, you know, I'm seeing patterns and trends here. I'm seeing some of these examples have more highlighting than others in general. I can see some specific examples of student work. I, as a teacher, can click on any specific example, like this one, say, and make it big, and comment on the things that I'm seeing this particular student, whose name I've hidden. Like this student said, periodically stops to check for understanding by asking students to give a thumbs up or thumbs down. Another one uses those exemplars of student thinking in a mini lesson. I can zoom out and zoom into a number of students thinking and make a teaching point about them. Jen, is there anything that you're thinking about or want to add right now?
Not right now. It's a little small for me to see on my screen, so I'll let you take that one.
Okay. Or I'll even just invite participants. I have to be honest, like right now because I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the participants, and I also can't see the chat box, at least not the way that I've set it up. But if participants, if you have questions or an aha, or if you're noticing something, I invite you to share it out. Actually, I did just put the chat box up. So things that you're noticing about this particular aspect of Nearpod. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Gabriel, I like that you can see what each student is doing. You know, I'm excited by this. This is how I've used it as a math teacher, giving a math problem and then note real time, looking over 25, 30 students' shoulders, and then noticing like students whose work is at grade level, students' work is approaching grade level, students' work is far below, finding teaching points, finding a student that used a unique visual approach, you know, some way that I can sort of zoom into that visual they've created and use it as a teaching point. Holiday says this looks like it can be great for math, and we are SVMI and a number of other sort of math-focused groups digging deep into Nearpod and Pear Deck and thinking of ways to really use it as a way to gather formative assessment around student thinking. All that asks, can we set it up so more than one teacher can see the response in real time? I haven't experimented with that functionality yet, so I'm not sure if that's possible or not, but that's something that Nearpod's help seems to be pretty effective, and I bet there's a way that we could answer that question relatively quickly. What we wanted to do is sort of model ways that apps like Nearpod and Pear Deck does it in a similar way, can sort of give you sort of that over-the-shoulder view into your whole class's thinking at the same time. And with that, what we want to do is just, I'm going to turn it over to Jen to just sort of zoom out a little bit, take a higher level view at formative assessment.
Thank you, Kevin. So I love this quote. It's from Paul Black, who, along with Dylan Villum, way back in the 90s, really got the ball rolling as far as formative assessment in education by writing a paper called Inside the Black Box. But to me, this quote just encapsulates what formative assessment is. It's not how we give the assessment. It's not the format of the assessment. It's really what we do with the data, right? We're the cooks, and we're adjusting the seasoning for each individual student to help them meet those learning goals. So next slide, Kevin. Thank you. So there are some attributes that all effective formative assessments have in common. So one of them is goal referenced. Both we and the students know what that learning target is that we are assessing with this particular formative assessment. It is individual, it's not a group grade. It is, we are gathering individual data from individual students in reference to that goal. How are they progressing towards that goal? And specific, that's kind of self-explanatory. It's around a specific learning goal. And then timely. So an effective formative assessment is occurring during or directly after perhaps an exit ticket or something like that instruction. So it's not 3 weeks later, I'm checking to see if you got it. It's as we are actually learning. So we as the teachers can adjust. I'm sure you all probably know most of these already. And then the one that sometimes I know as a teacher I struggled with early in my career is that our formative assessments are cognitively demanding and complex. So we're not just asking students questions at, let's say, DOK levels 1 and 2. We're asking those higher order thinking skills in our formative assessments so we can gauge how we can help our students get to those higher order thinking skills and not just sort of keep them in a box with the, tell me the definition, all that kind of good stuff. So again, I struggled with that early in my career. And it took me quite some time to be able to develop those in the lesson formative assessments that were really helping students access higher order thinking. So given that these are sort of the research-based factors that tell us that something is a good formative assessment, let's look at some things that we think might not be effective formative assessments. So next slide, Kevin. Now, these things in reference to those criteria that we just talked about, I would argue would not be considered highly effective formative assessments. However, I'm going to invite you to argue with me or perhaps offer a way that one of these or several of these might be turned into an effective formative assessment. And Kevin and I had a great back and forth around, I'll just tell you, the simply checking body language. So I'm going to be quiet for a minute, take a look at these, and would you argue that some of these maybe are effective formative assessments, or could they be tweaked a little bit in our current environment to make them more effective formative assessments? So maybe just add any thoughts you have in the chat, and I'll be quiet for a minute or so. Great comment, Heather. She's arguing that yes, if the one student verbally demonstrating understanding may be a formative assessment for that student, for sure. Yes, holidays. Several could be effective if you were assessing certain things. And that's the one that Kevin and I sort of had a back and forth on in our, virtual world now, checking body language. So if we perhaps had a rubric or a scale that we were using to gauge student engagement with our lessons or participation, whatever it might be, it may include, a learning target around body language, or like I have, I'm making gestures so that I know that you're interacting. So that I think could be, if we had, the goals, going back to the previous slide, if we had specific goals that we knew and the student knew, that was something we wanted them to do, I think it could be, in that case, an effective formative assessment. Let's see what else we've got in the chat. Yeah, quick about self-evaluation with added explanation of what they learned and what was difficult. Love that, Maria. That's great. All right, so we're gonna transition into our next slide and get you all out into some breakout rooms. So on this slide is, I think Kevin referenced it at the beginning, it's a spreadsheet that lists the wide variety of tools that we might want to use for formative assessments with a little bit of analysis. What options do they have? Is it an app? Is it a web-based? So in your Nearpod, if you just click on that picture, you will be linked to that spreadsheet. I'll give you a sec to do that. And give me a thumbs up when you've accessed that spreadsheet and you're ready to move on. Great. Gabriel, great. Okay, Kevin, can you go to the next slide? So Kevin will talk you through the topics for the breakouts, and I'll get us set up in the breakout rooms.
We value the opportunity for our participants to sort of interact and chat and process some of your experiences and your thinking in smaller groups. So right now it's 1:09. Our session goes till 1:20. So I'm going to suggest that Jen's going to create some breakouts, groups of 3 or 4. We'll give you 5 minutes. And what we'd like you to do is just, reintroduce yourselves in the smaller group, which school you're at, which grade level, what your role is. And then just, have a brief conversation, share ideas of ways that you can build in formative assessment in your distance learning classroom. So, build on some of the things that you experienced or saw, or some of your own prior knowledge and assets experiences. What are some ways that you can we can up our game in the formative assessment world in our classrooms with distance learning? I'll leave this Nearpod slide up that has the prompt, and I think Jen's going to put us into breakout rooms.
Here we go. Did you not get the pop-up, Gabriel?
Oh, now it just popped up.
My Wi-Fi is a little spotty. That might have been it. Makes me dizzy when they all start popping in at once.
Welcome back, everyone. I don't know about you. I heard some absolutely incredible ideas in the breakout room that I was in, teachers on the ground. One I'll just briefly share is like every kid gets a whiteboard and a black marker as a way to like share their thinking in a way that's a little easier than the Nearpod app that I shared with you. That can be really hard for a fourth grader, say, to like write on. But man, I was thinking, yeah, whiteboards and a black magic marker can be a way to get some students thinking. But I've talked enough. It is 1:18 and we're ending in 2 minutes. I think we have enough time for a couple of share outs. Like if you've got a great idea for formative assessment, we'd love to hear it in the big room. Anyone want to share?
I have a suggestion actually for the spreadsheet that you shared with us with all the different formative assessment tools. There's one other thing that I wanted to know about all of these, and that's which one will integrate with my gradebook. So I think it might be helpful to add another column to say, does this integrate with Google Classroom? Does this integrate with Canvas? Because that would save me a lot of time and would help me make my decisions based on like, you know, can I use this, or is it going to be a hassle to integrate it with what I'm already doing?
Great suggestion, Heather, and we will definitely add that in. So hopefully y'all have that link, and as it's updated, obviously you'll get that data. But thank you.
That would be awesome.
Thanks for that. I think, you know, a lot of our districts are using Google Classroom or, you know, whatever app you're using to sort of push out your assignments. They need to integrate in order to make our jobs doable. So thanks. Any other last minute ideas or comments?
I think I'd also just share that if you haven't tried them, Zoom polls are really handy. And that way you don't have to log in with another code or go anywhere else or open another browser window or anything at all, but it's quick and easy. It's a pain in the butt if you want to like find out exactly who gave which response, but it is quick and dirty.
It is 1:20. I think we have a 10-minute stretch break, and we do want to honor our body's needs to get up and move and go re-experience the outside or whatever you all need. Thank you for coming to our session. Jen, you want to share last minute thought?
No, just thank you all for coming. And Kevin, on the last slide are Kevin and my emails. Reach out anytime. Hope you've accessed our distance learning website on the county website. There are tons of resources there across grade levels, content areas. So please access at your leisure.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck this fall. And we are here to support you at the county office. So